Okay, so do pop some questions into chat, and we're going to move into our final area of reflections for this evening, where we're going to think about how we're building those connections between church and home, and recognizing actually that the distance between those things, which for a very long time they were poles apart, but have in recent years felt that they've been drawing closer and closer to one another, and lots of questions around how those two things are, hence why we're talking about that this evening, because we want to make Sunday mornings and our experience as part of church in a Sunday service have a sense of meaning and connection and purpose with what happens at home for the other 6 days of the week. A month or two back, the church that I'm part of, St Mark's, hosted a church barbecue, and it was a fun day. We wanted to try and encourage people to come and just sort of put their toe in the water to see other people, and recognizing that obviously people had been separated and apart, and we thought we would try to just help people just start to begin that move maybe back to being in a sense of connection with one another. And it was really great because lots of families did come, lots of people who haven't seen each other came. Some of them just popped in for a short while, some of them came and stayed for the whole time. We had a very heavy downpour of rain at one point during it, which was quite entertaining as people kind of ran off to try to find somewhere to eat their hot dogs and their burgers. I think that's all part of the fun, isn't it, really, when you're doing those things. I deliberately volunteered that day to keep an eye on the bouncy castle. That was my job. I said, I'll go and stand there and supervise, partly because I do care about safety, but also because my experience has taught me that whilst children are bouncing on the castle, parents and carers are often standing nearby. And so I knew that I would spend time being able to chat and sort of just catch up with people without kind of wandering around and having to kind of start that of my own accord. So it just worked really well, being sort of stationed there for the whole afternoon. And I got to talk to lots of people, particularly actually about their faith as families at home, as they'd experienced it during the pandemic, when we were meeting online, when we were having Zoom services and trying to sort of offer things that they could take part in. And we reflected that during the pandemic, it had raised lots of questions because they were curious really about what does being a family of faith look like? How do we do it? And it was just really interesting to have those conversations with people and learn about the kinds of things that people had been doing. One of the things which really struck a chord for me was that one family before last Christmas led the church in prayers of an evening at 6 o'clock for about 10 minutes. And actually, it wasn't the parents who led it, it was 2 of their children, and they hosted the prayer time. We were only going to do it for a couple of weeks. They enjoyed doing it so much, they did it right the way through, beyond into the new year as well. And it was really great that the church listened and responded to what they wanted to do so that we could meet and pray together with their help and support. So I want to offer some intentional ways in which we can foster faith with our families, and things which are also incredibly simple, because actually most of the time I do not believe these things are rocket science. I think there are some very simple ways in which we can approach these things which aren't going to take a huge amount of time or resources to do them. So let's just run round these 5 different things which I think are going to help us build those connections between church and home. And these really are intended for us as practitioners. And so if we're volunteers, if we're paid staff, if we are ordained people serving churches, I think all of these things are really valuable for us to reflect on. So first of all, I want to encourage us to be an equipper, to try things out in church that can then be transferred and tried at home. So for instance, one of the easiest things we can do is pose a question to our congregations that they can then talk to the people around them. They can do some wondering together about a Bible passage or a theme, recognizing very importantly that we're not looking for right answers, but for people of all ages to share their thoughts and their ideas. So we get a little bit of a window into other people's faith and their discipleship lives. We get to hear a little bit of what they understand, and we get a chance to share that and to build one another up in the process. When we're doing those kinds of things in church, so when we're offering an activity which we're encouraging people to do together, the impact of that is that it really does build confidence for the times outside of services, where particularly when questions crop up. And so it's not about saying we've got to be super spiritual, but having just that willingness to explore, to be welcoming of different ideas and thoughts, and building our creative approach to faith in safe and helpful ways. We often hear that parents and carers can have a lack of confidence to talk of faith, of what they believe or what they think. But if we remove those ideas that actually there is a right way to respond, then people feel safer to say, well, actually, it made me think about this. It made me wonder about this. Children do that often quite instinctively, and we can learn a lot from children about how they do that. Being distracted by the fireworks, I'm sorry. Secondly, be a connector. Be deliberate in mentioning moments that occur during the week when we're not gathered together. So, for instance, think about the words we've just been singing and about perhaps how great God is. And maybe you can do that when you're walking home from school, when you're eating your dinner or your lunch, or when you're snuggling down in bed. How have you noticed God's greatness today? So we are connecting what we're learning about, the ways in which we're worshipping, and we are thinking about how can we take that away with us, and how can we use that through the course of our week to be reflecting on faith as well. Thirdly, be a supporter. Cheer families on. Help families to recognize that nurturing faith at home is possible. It will look different for everyone's household, but that doesn't mean that there is only one way to do it. It doesn't mean you have to be the kind of family who sit around and do an hour's Bible study together, although if that's what a family wants to do, then that is great. Let's support and encourage it. But if for some families, they're able to perhaps just have a few moments of prayer each week, every few days, let's value that just as much. So it's not about saying, look, here's the template for how you do it. It's about saying what you do. As long as you're doing something, that is great. And let's really try to nurture that sense of you can do this and we want to support you in it. So it's not about implementing a program, but home simply being a place where we talk and discuss spiritual things just as much as we would anything else. So whether or not we thought that dinner was burnt or spoilt, what we would like to watch on Netflix, what our plans for the weekend are, or about something that perhaps we've struggled with through the course of the day. Talking of faith needs to be as seamless and as comfortable as we talk about anything else. And it needs to really be embedded and part of our wider conversations. And we need to try to encourage that and support it for families so that faith is a feature in the mix and is just a normal everyday activity. We don't need to speak of it in hushed tones. We don't need to create very kind of uniform ways of doing it and be very ritualistic. It can happen much more informally, but we need to give families and encourage them to have the freedom to explore that for themselves in their own daily life. Fourthly, be an inventor. Think imaginatively to help families see the possibilities. And that comes back to what I was just saying a moment ago. We might want to remind families of their calling. If we go back to that passage from Deuteronomy 6, what does that look like for you to talk about those things as a household? We may not these days want to mark or write things above our doorways, although perhaps at certain times of the year we do put things, for instance, like an Advent wreath on our door because we recognise that that's an act of faith to do that. But actually we recognise that no one size fits all and that faith grows in different places around the clock. And so for lots of families, actually a really good way to put their toe in the water, to give something a try, is something that's part of the Christian calendar and the seasons when we celebrate with one another. So that could be Lent in the run up to Easter, or it could be during Advent as we approach Christmas. And so it's about maybe trying something during those times and seeing what works. And actually, if something doesn't feel that it's a good fit for a family, they've tried it, that's great. They can try something else another time. I know of various places, for instance, who have collected and given families Advent bags, and they're full of questions, activities, and ideas of things that they can do during the course of Advent. It might be that some families really enjoy doing that. They might really want something that's a bit more structured. Some families, it may be a case of saying, if you've got an Advent calendar, each day you open the Advent calendar, pray, talk to God in that moment, give thanks that Jesus is coming, and just give them kind of some ideas and ways in which they might be able to do that for themselves. And then finally, let's be in it too. Let's join in. Let's share our own experience when it goes well, but also when it's been a total disaster. Let's help families to know that we don't have it all sussed out. Sometimes practitioners are perceived, and clergy as well. We are the professional people of faith, perhaps, and that can somehow seem daunting to people. But actually, when we share that there are things that we tried that didn't go too great, that can really help families feel that they can give something a try, and it's not just them if it doesn't work out well. And so we can recognise the challenges and some of the lessons in that spirit of wanting to learn and grow together. And that can be a real encouragement for people, because they realise that it's not them failing as a family somehow to be spiritual or to be faithful. It's just perhaps that the timing wasn't right, that actually what they were choosing to do just didn't suit their family at the time. Maybe their family was tired. And it's just about looking and creating practices that they can do at home with one another. It can be as simple as lighting a candle at bedtime and just sitting for a few moments and remembering that God is with us. So some simple things there, some 5 different perhaps potential roles that we can have. We can be equippers, we can be connectors, we can be supporters, we can be inventors, and we can be in it too. And I wonder which one of those 5 ways to connect church and home do you find the hardest or most challenging, and which one is maybe the easiest or most natural to you? And I think I want to give you some space to talk about why do you think that is? Is that partly to do with your own experience? Maybe you were raised in a Christian home and there were things that your family did which you carry on doing now, or you really don't want to do now. And then a third question, which is around share some ideas, maybe about some of the things which you have done with your families, or you've seen others do. Share some of that knowledge and experience that's in the room to spur one another on as well. So we're going to go into breakout rooms, and then we'll come back for a little bit of summary and reflection in about 10 minutes or so time. Hello, welcome back. I don't know where the time's gone this evening. I don't know about anybody else. Maybe because I've spent so much time talking, it feels like it's flown by to me. Just to sum up where we've sort of been through the course of this evening, I think it's really helpful just to kind of check in and revisit some of what we've been exploring. And there's a final slide which kind of just sums up some of these things for us. And so we've done some learning around developing our theology and reflecting on how that relates to our practice, so our work with families and households. We've identified the importance of establishing meaningful relationships with families, and we've also considered the need for us to be intentional about seeking ways that connect what happens at church with life at home, and that we really need to be our direction of travel needs to be trying to draw those things closer together so that we can take what we learn and experience when we're in church, so that becomes part of our experience back at home. I would really love at this point for you to put one thing into the chat which has struck a chord with you this evening. And it could be something that's very simple. It could be something which was just kind of almost like an afterthought that's just crossed your mind, that maybe you're thinking, actually, I want to go away and maybe think about that a bit more. It can be anything through the course of this evening. So just start typing those things, putting them into chat so that we can see where your thinking and where your learning has taken you through the course of our time together. And again, that will be really different depending on what our roles are, what we do, and perhaps whether we're very experienced practitioners, whether we're new in our roles, or whether we're just kind of considering what this looks like. So thank you, people who started to do that. I can see a few things there. So just type in, it might have been something that cropped up in the conversations in your breakout rooms. That would be brilliant. Some amazing fireworks being let off around me now. If only I could go and step outside and have a look, I'm sure I'd see an amazing display. It kind of feels as though it's kind of the backdrop for the end of the session. We're ending with a really big display. Yes, so thanks, Jill. Adults can learn from children just as much as the other way around. I think that's very important. The need for us to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly. Also about being intentional and encouraging parents that their children's faith development rests with them. Posing a question. I love that idea, Jackie. Posing a question for families to ponder during the course of the week. And also, Adenike talks about Jesus' ministry of inclusion and how do we sort of try to nurture a sense of that, and that no connection is too small. I remember when I was in lay ministry in Luton, just a few miles down the road from me, I quite often would go into the huge Asda supermarket that there is just on the outskirts of Luton, and I would, if I timed it right, I would bump into so many people. I would often, if I went sort of around 3:30, 4 o'clock, families would be popping in after school, and I would kind of walk around. I might have just popped in to grab a couple of pints of milk, but I'd be in there for a good half an hour because I would see people, have a bit of a chat, find out about how their day had been. Some of those conversations were just seconds, but actually over time, that is what builds the sense of connection. So yeah, I just really want to encourage all of us in that.